Hey guys, this is Axman and we're back in another history video. Today we are talking about the Pickle. Super excited to talk about the Pickle. She's got a super rich history and she's fascinating. It's been a real pleasure researching her and her story, so I'm excited to bring that to you. But before we get into the history, let's talk about what she's like in game. She's a 4.5 rig ship, so again, like the cutter, she's really manoeuvrable, especially in non-favourable winds. She can mount 12 guns at 6 a side, either 6-pound cannons or 12-pound carronades. She has a battle rating of 40 and requires a crew of 55. Cargo capacity of 60, and you need to be crafting level 5 to craft one. So why would you pick a pickle? Why would you pick to captain a Pickle over, say, something a little bit later on? Why would you jump out of the cutter into a Pickle before getting into like a Mercury or a Snow? Well, there's a couple of reasons. First of all, the Pickle isn't the cutter. We all get sick of being in the cutter early game after a while. All we're doing in that first sort of few hours is just trying to get enough XP and gold to try and get a new ship. Well, the Pickle's an excellent ship to move up from. Once you've grasped the basic controls of the game and you feel like you want to move on, the Pickle is a great next step to teach you a few more skills before moving on to even bigger ships. The Pickle is the first ship in game that allows you to try your hand at manual sails. It's tricky to get used to. There will be a tutorial coming soon. But still, she's an excellent sort of practice ship to jump in to get used to it before you start sailing the bigger square riggers that require manual sails and stuff like that. But yeah, like I said, she's got a super rich and super awesome history. I'm excited to bring it to you, so let's get to that. So, HMS Pickle, as she was known later on in her life. She's the first ship that we're covering in the history series that was involved at the Battle of Trafalgar. She didn't play any role in the fighting, but she was still exceptionally important. She was, she saved a lot of lives there, for one. Well, you'll find out later in the video, but she was also really important after the Battle of Trafalgar. But we'll get to that later on. So she is the little ship with the adorable name, and she has huge historical importance and is still remembered and celebrated to this day. Pickle was built in 1799 in Bermuda, which is up here. Originally named Sting. She was a civilian ship, but was purchased by Vice Admiral Lord Hugh Seymour, who was Commander-in-Chief of the Jamaica Station and would have worked out of Kingston/Port Royal. So all you Brit players know exactly where that is. Well, everyone really. He paid £2,500 for her, which in today's money would be £146,000 or $207,000. A hefty sum, but the little ship would go on to prove herself to be worth it in the years to follow. The Admiral wanted to use her as a tender ship for his flagship HMS Sans Parial. A tender ship being almost kind of like a servant ship to the larger vessel. She would have carried dispatches, crew, personnel or supplies, and generally doing what was needed of her by the bigger ship. A couple of interesting points about the Pickle while she sailed Caribbean waters. She participated in a recapture of one vessel and 4 prize captures. Most interestingly though, is that a schooner Sting was reported to have been part of the convoy that sailed with HMS Lowestoft on her final voyage before wrecking. There is no other mention of a Sting in the area at the time, so it could only have been the Pickle, whose name change hadn't been made official yet, but she had been known as Pickle for a while on station in Jamaica. The reason for mentioning this is that the Lowestoft was the first vessel that Admiral Lord Nelson served on after he passed his examinations for lieutenant. So already the Pickle and Nelson have kind of an abstract connection before Trafalgar. Of course, Nelson was not on board the Lowestoft when she wrecked, having moved much higher up the naval ladder. Admiral Lord Seymour died of yellow fever in September 1801, and his family wanted his body returned to his homeland to be buried there. It was at this time that full independent command of the Pickle was given to Lieutenant Thomas Thrush, meaning the Pickle was no longer a servant ship under Sans Parial. She and her captain and crew were then given the responsibility of bearing the dead admiral's body back to England. The Pickle was refitted between January and March 1802, and it was then that she was officially dubbed Pickle. She patrolled course in the English Channel between the Solent and Land's End. She was stationed here mainly to catch smugglers, as the French Revolutionary Wars were sort of winding down. Lieutenant Thrush, in command of Pickle, captured a smuggler's cutter and was promoted soon after to the rank of commander in May 1802 and became a post captain, which means full captain, because anyone in command of a ship is called captain. Doesn't matter what your rank is. If you're in command of a ship, you are called by the crew captain, but post captain is the rank of captain. He was made post captain in 1809. His career after the Pickle was unremarkable, and he retired in 1825, becoming a pacifist, and in a 32-page pamphlet addressed to the king, filled with mostly biblical quotes decrying the act of war. Now, back to the Pickle. With Lieutenant Thrush promoted and moved on, in steps the famous Lieutenant John Richards Le Penotier. If I'm probably pronouncing that wrong, but that's what I'm going to call him. As he is given command of the Pickle. Not to lessen Le Penotier's achievements, but after the Battle of Trafalgar, there are accounts of moments of ineptitude and cruelty levelled against him while he commanded the Pickle, but we'll get to that. The anti-smuggling patrols continued under Le Penotier's command, but now the Pickle was patrolling in the Bristol Channel. Then, after being refitted in September, she was sent to the Mediterranean carrying dispatches to Sir Richard Bickerton's squadron off Sardinia. She made the rounds around the Mediterranean, visiting Naples, Malta, Cartagena, Gibraltar, before finally returning to Falmouth in February. In May 1803, she was recommissioned, just a week before hostilities resumed with Napoleon after the Peace of Amiens. In June, she was ordered to join the fleet off Ushant for the blockade for the French naval base at Brest. In the same month, she had her only fatality of her entire naval service, Ordinary Seaman James Stainer, who was unfortunately lost overboard. Only one person died while serving in Pickle for her entire sort of naval service. That's incredible. That's incredible to me. It blows my mind. Pickle spent the next year and a half stationed with the fleet blockade in Brest, under general command of Admiral Sir Cuthbert Collingwood, whom you may have heard of, a local guy from my hometown. Life aboard the Pickle during this period was not easy. Life was never easy in the Royal Navy, but the poor men of the Pickle were particularly pained, and it is this period where we find Le Penotier's faults on display the most. The Pickle lost her bowsprit, various other spars, and her main boom many times and had to jettison some of her guns on 3 occasions to save herself. No other commander of the Pickle managed to see her so damaged. Punishment aboard the Pickle was swift and harsh and meted out more often than would be usual aboard such a small vessel, where discipline would have usually been more lax than, say, on a frigate or ship of the line. Under his command, her rate of desertion was a full 1/2 of her minimum complement, and floggings were common. This is in contrast to her other commanders, where we find no reports of such harsh punishments. One instance in October of 1803 saw the boatswain's mate, one of the Pickle's most senior ratings, desert with a number of other men. They were recaptured and accused of mutiny and conspiracy to take command of the ship. These charges were dropped, however, but despite his plea that, quote, "we are discontented and very wet in the Pickle," end quote, he was flogged round the fleet, meaning he was taken to every ship in the blockading fleet and flogged by a member of each's crew. This was one of the harshest punishment a man could receive in the Royal Navy. Life in the blockading fleet at Brest was both mundane and at times dangerous for the crew of the Pickle. She was often just used for ferrying dispatches and collecting the weekly accounts from each of the fleet ships, but other times she was sent right into the harbour of Brest to count how many French ships of the line there were. On one occasion she landed a party to destroy a semaphore station at Point St Matthew. This was the inspiration for C.S. Forester's Hornblower novel, Hornblower and the Hotspur, wherein Hornblower destroys a semaphore station at Point St Matthew. Little tip there for you. I love Hornblower books. And for those of you that don't know what a semaphore station is, it's a kind of message relay station where they'd raise and lower flags to send messages to a semaphore station further up the coast or further inland, etc., etc., until it reached an end point. So it was a way of sending messages quicker than, sending someone on the back of a horse, something like that. But moving on. Life continued like this for the Pickle for about 2 years. It was a hard life for both ship and crew. A ship designed and built in the Caribbean and optimised for that region's particular habits and eccentricities, serving in the brutal, cold and rough seas of the English Channel and inshore duties, made life tough for the crew, who were overworked and overpunished. She only captured a few prizes, an American ship carrying contraband and 3 French coastal vessels, none of which managed to make the officers or crew rich men under the Navy's tradition of prize money, which is sharing a cut of the value of any captured ship. In later 1804, early 1805, she returned to the familiar seas of the West Indies, but only briefly, returning to Plymouth for a long refit in May 1805. Between July and October 1805, she shuttled dispatches between Plymouth and Sir Robert Calder's fleet stationed off Finisterre and Lord Nelson's fleet stationed off Cadiz. She once narrowly escaped capture off Cadiz by Spanish gunboats. She was becalmed by lack of wind at the time, and the gunboats thought to capitalise on this. Fortunately, enough of a wind picked up so that she could bring her guns to bear and beat the attackers off. She suffered only 1 casualty, but no fatalities. On the 9th of October, the Pickle was accompanying HMS Weasel to assist in reconnaissance missions for the fleet at Cadiz. Pickle was small and light enough to get in close enough to the coast to provide an exact count of enemy warships moored in Cadiz harbour. And so we're here at the fateful day, the 21st of October 1805, the Battle of Trafalgar. Pickle was obviously far too small to take part in the fighting itself. She was stationed northwest of Nelson's weather line, where the Admiral was leading the charge in HMS Victory. Of course, the Royal Sovereign was the first ship amongst the enemy, and fighting well before anyone else got there. But we'll get to the details of the Battle of Trafalgar in another video. Now, during the battle, a French ship, Achille, was sinking. It had been badly damaged by British ships and was on its way down. The Pickle, Entreprenante, a British naval cutter, and the boats of Prince and Swiftsure went to the aid of the sinking French ship, which had caught fire, which ignited its magazine and it exploded. All in all, this saved between 100 and 200 men and 2 women. So the Pickle played a very important role in saving the lives of those French sailors. After the battle, Admiral Collingwood, now commander of the fleet after Lord Nelson's death, ordered Le Penotier and the Pickle to carry the dispatches detailing the battle, news of the victory, and news of Lord Nelson's death back to the Admiralty in London. However, Pickle couldn't leave straight away as the weather turned nasty and blew up a storm that lasted days. The battle having started on the 21st, it wasn't until the 26th that the Pickle could leave with its news. This mission would be Le Penotier's moment of glory, and a moment that would have both him and his little ship etched into the history books forever. The wind was not fair for England and progress was slow until they rounded Cape St Vincent on the 29th. It was as they were passing Cape St Vincent and making better progress that they sighted the sloop HMS Nautilus under command of Captain John Sykes. Captain Sykes, being the senior officer, met with Le Penotier and naturally coaxed the news out of him and felt that it was his duty to share in the burden of delivering it, and so the race was on. Both ships took off towards home, but the bigger square-rigged sloop was faster. She first dropped a copy of the dispatches off at Lisbon before tearing back to Plymouth. After a few days, the Nautilus caught and passed the poor little Pickle, thanks to the following wind favouring the square-rigger's sail plan. On the 2nd of November, the Nautilus had to change course, however, and head back in the opposite direction, having nearly been intercepted by a French squadron. The French ships didn't chase down the Nautilus, but delayed her enough to allow Pickle to retake the lead in the race, having never even spotted the French ships. At 10 o'clock in the morning of the 4th of November, HMS Pickle and her commander, Le Penotier, landed and went ashore at Falmouth, announcing the news to the crowd that had gathered there before hiring a post-chase to take him the 266 miles to London. Since hiring the post chase cost him about half of his annual wage, he was taking a huge risk, as there was no guarantee that he'd be reimbursed by the Admiralty when he got to London. But had he not paid so much and taken the post chase, the regular coach service would have taken about a week to reach London. As it stood, he made the journey in 37 hours. He arrived in London at the Admiralty after 19 horse changes just before midnight on the 6th of November. His news was immediately spread to all of those in high places and, of course, the press. The penalty was presented to King George the next day, to whom he recounted the battle. The penalty was indeed reimbursed the cost of the post chase, as well as a £500 customary sum for being the bearer of the news of a victory, and received a sword worth 100 guineas from the Patriotic Fund, which would have been a fine weapon, on top of his share of prize money from the battle, and he was promoted to commander, so not a bad deal overall. And this is where we shall leave Le Penaltier. His story is inextricably linked with Pickle's, but this is where he leaves her, and since this video is about the ship and not her captain, we must return to her. In 1806, Lieutenant Daniel Calloway took command of Pickle for a brief time. Under his command, the Pickle and her crew managed to capture a Prussian ship, Elizabeth Henrietta, and later captured a French privateer, Favourite, after exchanging 2 broadsides. In 1807, command of the Pickle was given to Lieutenant Moses Canaday. On the 26th of July that year, Pickle was carrying dispatches from England to Admiral Lord Collingwood at Cadiz. In the middle of the night, lookouts spotted broken water, which usually meant very shallow water. By then it was too late and Pickle grounded. She stove in her bottom. She tipped over to port and half sank, lying on her side. She was not salvageable. A sad end to a fantastic little ship with some amazing history and some brilliant stories to tell. This little ship is so important that she is still celebrated today. There are numerous replicas of her all around the world, and warrant officers of the Royal Navy celebrate an annual Pickle Night early in November every year. So there you have it, HMS Pickle, a fine little ship with a history as rich as many other larger and much more grandiose ships. I hope you've enjoyed this video. I've really enjoyed reading about the Pickle and brushing up on her history and kind of getting to know her and her crew, and it's been fantastic. I hope you've enjoyed it as much as I have. If you did, leave a like and subscribe if you really want to, and I'll see you in the next video.